Hello, everyone. Welcome to another deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we've got some really interesting chess puzzles lined up.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, they're all about gaining material advantage, which
Oh,
is,
yeah.
always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the board positions ready.
Ready to go.
Let's just jump right in.
Sounds good.
All right, this first puzzle, white has their knight on e5, pawn on b4, e4, f4, a bishop on d3, pawn i2, c2, queen on f2, g2 and h2 for the pawns, kings on c1, and rooks are d1 and h1.
Okay.
Black has their rook on a8, bishop on c8, rook on f8, king on g8, pawns on f7, g7, h7, a6, queens on b6, pawn on e6, b5, knight on c5, and pawn on d5.
All right.
It is Black's turn to move.
Okay.
Now, if you just take a glance at this, it looks pretty even,
Yeah.
But if you look a little closer, there's a black knight on c5, and he's in a pretty interesting position.
Yeah, that knight is really the key to this whole puzzle, I think.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about it is how that knight can be used to force a queen exchange.
Yeah.
And, usually when you exchange pieces of equal value, it's sort of a neutral move. But in this case, it sets up a pretty significant advantage for Black.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how would Black make that happen?
Well, Black's going to start by moving that knight from c5 to b3.
Okay.
And that forces White to capture with their pawn on a2.
Right.
And that's when Black swoops in with the queen and takes the White queen off of f2.
So the answer is Black knight c5 to b3,
Uh-huh.
White pawn a2 to b3,
Yep.
Black queen b6 to f2.
Here you go.
Just like that, forced sequence, queen exchange.
Exactly. And so it's not a checkmate, but
But-
Black has a huge material advantage now.
They do.
The queen's the most powerful piece on the board. And, losing that puts White at a serious disadvantage going forward.
For sure. I mean, that's a great example of how these seemingly simple moves can just have, really big consequences down the line.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to puzzle number 2.
Okay.
This one highlights another way to gain material advantage, this time through a sacrifice. Okay, so White has their queen on c7, pawn on d7, bishop on h7, pawn on b4, bishop on f4, pawn on c3, kings on b2, rook is on c2, pawn on h2, and another rook on c1.
Right.
Black has rook on a8, knight on d8, king on f8, pawns f7, g7, h6, rook on b5, and their queen is on h3.
Gotcha.
Black's turn to move, and
Yeah, things are not looking good for White here.
no, not at all. That white king is
Very exposed.
Yeah.
And that Black queen on h3 is a huge threat.
huge. Yeah, so this position seems, really ripe for some kind of sacrificial play by Black.
Right, aiming for that checkmate.
Yeah, but a sacrifice, what do they have to gain by giving up a piece?
Well, sometimes giving up a piece can clear the way for a much bigger gain.
Okay.
And in this case, Black is willing to sacrifice their rook to create a path for that queen to checkmate.
Wow, that's a pretty bold strategy.
It is.
So what are the actual moves here?
So Black's going to move the rook from b5 to b4,
Okay.
which tempts White to capture it with their pawn on c3.
Right.
But then that opens up the diagonal
Yes.
for Black's queen to move from h3 to a3, which forces the White king over to b1.
Okay, so the answer so far is Black rook, b5 to b4.
Yep.
White pawn, c3 to b4.
Mm-hmm.
Black queen, h3 to a3.
That's right.
White king, b2 to b1.
Yeah.
But that's not checkmate yet, is it?
Not quite, but it's the setup for the final move.
Okay.
Now, Black simply moves their queen from a3 to a1, checkmate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Black queen, a3 to a1. There it is.
It's a beautiful finish.
It is. So Black sacrifices the rook,
Mm-hmm.
but forces this whole sequence of moves
Right.
leading to checkmate.
Exactly. And this puzzle really shows how a well-calculated sacrifice can just completely turn a game around.
Yeah.
It's not just about the material, it's about understanding positional play and
Right.
forcing your opponent's moves.
Yeah, well, these two puzzles have been a fantastic demonstration of how material advantage can be the deciding factor.
For sure.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.